Well, I guess the big question, all of us that bike all the time, and mountain biking has become so important, but the mountain bike trails are tied into the cross country trails, are tied into the snowshoe trails, and then you have ATV trails. And basically, what has occurred is that there was a posting done by the Indian Nation. It's important to note that the Penobscot Indian Nation owns 24,000 acres of land in Carabasset, which is just about half the size of the entire town. They acquired the land in the Indians Claim Act, which it was signed in 1979. It was negotiated for 7 years and really became a one of its kind settlement to give the nation land. Within that whole process, there was an interest in what they were really trying to do is put land into what's called federal trust, which would put the lands in the federal trust. Dead River, which owned the 24,000 acres plus the land up in Alder Stream, owned Alder Stream, which is in the unorganized territory. Our land was the only land, other than a little piece that the Passamaquoddies obtained, were called fee lands, meaning they were part of an established municipality. They weren't in an unorganized territory, so they became fee lands and they were not able to put into trust land. So that's 1980, and any agreement over time needs to change. And unbeknownst to us, that change was occurring about 11 or 12 months ago in the legislature through a task force, which consisted of the 5 Indian chiefs and 4 legislators. And unbeknownst to us, this discussion was going on that they wanted to rewrite the Indian Claim Act of 1980, which anything that's that old needs to be looked at, and that's typical. But they basically rewrote, in our opinion, they rewrote a lot. We didn't become aware of it till the only good thing about the virus, the legislature shut down in March, and we found out that they were actually having a hearing about it. So that's kind of where we came in. What's concerned a lot of people here is that coincidentally to that, and I can't remember if it happened before or after we found out, the roads got posted in Carabasset Valley that the Indian Nation owns. And once again, it's important to emphasize that the nation has been wonderful allowing us to build these trails and use these trails on their land. And that's very important to remember. It's their land, and we respect that. We have tried to find out why the roads got posted, and we've been in touch with the nation, but like every government agency, they were shut down. And the only answer we got was that once the virus is gone, which we all hope was yesterday, but it's not, they will be in touch with us. So again, coincidentally, this bill is now in front of the Judiciary Committee to rewrite the Indian Land Claim Act. What it would have done to Carabasset Valley, there is a host of items. There was probably 20 items in it, but what it specifically would have done to Carabasset Valley is taken that 24,000 acres and allowed them to put it in federal trust without the vote of the town or the state. That land would become federal trust, federal Indian trust land, and any state, local zoning ordinances, Department of Environmental Protection, clean air, water, logging, would be moot on that land. And that's not to say that the Indians would do anything wrong with the land, because they have a reputation of being good stewards of the land. But our point is that we have hundreds and hundreds of houses that abut that land. And we're now all of a sudden changing the rules for all those homeowners. So we felt in the original Indians Claim Act, the reason this land, this 24,000 acres, was not put into the original Claims Act or into federal trust was because we were a municipality. We were a town. And we had zoning and we had ordinances, and that's how it stood. It's called fee land, which is land that we collect taxes on. And I think all of their land is pretty much in tree growth, which is a wonderful thing for the state, that it allows them to limit their taxes, and they just have to grow trees, and it's wonderful. All that being said, we're kind of in an impasse right now, and we've been actively, I should say very actively for the last month, involved in all these hearings that were taking place between the group that formulated this new this Indian Claim Act and the Judiciary Committee. It's a subcommittee. And when we realized the details of it, we were surprised. We did get a letter from the governor, and she was as surprised as we were, and noted many discrepancies that she felt. The bottom line to all this is we so much want to sit down with the tribes and figure how we can work this out between us. Because there is a lot of good stuff in there. There's judiciary stuff where they want to be able to try minor crimes that involve tribes, that involve the Indians. They want to be able to try that in their own courts, which makes sense. Again, that would have to be in federal trust land. And therein lies the predicament that we find ourselves in, is that we want to support the nation, and yet we can't in good conscience just totally give up our zoning, our ordinances, and our protections that everyone in the town and the state gets from those controls. So really this timeout, which seems to have occurred, that the legislature is not going to meet, and this may get pushed into next year even, we want to try to sit together with the tribes and figure out how we can work out this big piece. Because I think if we can do that between us, they're going to be very, very successful in the legislature. But we have to get that cooperation from both of us. And it's a give and take. But that is kind of our goal right now. Oh, probably almost 2 months now, just a phone session without really the governor, the chief, or any of the members of the tribe that are in their judiciary. It was just tribal members. And I used the word control, and they jumped on that. And I guess the real way to look at that is just common ground where we can meet. Because as I said, they are good stewards of the land, and we respect that. And what we're trying to do is be mutually beneficial to our homeowners, so they know that they're still protected by the zoning and the laws of the state. So somewhere in this is a compromise that we never were called to the table. The irony of this whole process, that again, the tribes probably got 11, 12 months into this, there was no representation from any municipality, no representation from the towns that would be directly affected by it. The only representation was the 5 Indian chiefs and 4 legislators, which is okay, but they should have solicited input. You know, if someone builds a house next to mine, the abutters are notified that, hey, somebody's going to do something. That never happened. Right. But I still think that finally found something good about the virus. Maybe this timeout right now will allow us to sit down and work out something that's mutually agreeable. Right. Yeah, and I don't think either party is at fault. It's just the way it just snowballed. Yep. And I think everyone was surprised, especially us, when all of a sudden in the middle or the end of March, we find out that there's been a hearing to take lands within the town and put it in federal trust. Yep. And again, it's their land, we understand that, but federal trust is totally different from what the state of Maine, how they jurisdiction over their lands.
Is there anything that you can say as a representative of the town as far as using lands that have been posted right now?
And that's been everyone's dilemma. Just to be clear, the narrow gauge, we have an easement, so the narrow gauge trail is ours. And the carriage road, which goes out to Flagstaff Lake, we have a yearly permit which we renewed back this winter with the nation, and so we do have a permit to use that. The trails off of the carriage road, however, are posted. Highland Road is posted, and I don't want to go through the important part of this is that the outdoor center, we figure about 80% of those trails are on our land, the town's land. And 20% is around Redington in that area, and that is the nation's land. And therein lies the confusion, because the road, Highland Road, has a posted sign, but none of the trails do. So therein lies the confusion. There's the clarity that we're trying to understand. It's important to also understand, before I do forget, is that the ATV club, the snowmobile club, they all use those roads for access to the UT, which is the state-run trails for ATVs, snowmobiles, and the like. That is not clear as to their usage. So that's where all the questions come from. And we try to offer as much guidance as we can. And I know eventually we will meet with the tribes, but again, the virus, that's the bad part. I'm hoping the good part is that we can now talk about it.
So stay tuned.
Stay tuned.